Hey, are you a wood turner? We are about to learn what happens in...
Mel, pass the pepper, please.
My name is Mel Genge from Hub City Turners, and today we're going to make a pepper mill. I started to make my first pepper mill in 2008, and I have found some improvements over the years. Start with, these are some of the type of mills. This one here this is a ceramic insert in it, and these here are the old-fashioned top grinders. And this is a salt shaker. These ceramics, we can use them in salt or pepper. The sizing that you need almost 2 3/4 inches to work with to make a good pepper mill. If you don't have anything that's one size, you can laminate it like these are here with the 3 pieces. The reason I have this one here is that today I'm going to complete a set of pepper mills, salt and pepper mills. This one has got the walnut on the outside, and this one will have the walnut on the inside. So if you want to put them on a table, and you can decide, oh, I'll use the color in the center as whether I got salt in this one and pepper in the other one. To get started, we will put this on the lathe and make it round. To start with, to put this blank in the chuck and in the lathe, we have here is a safe drive, and that I'll put it in the headstock on it. And I'll have a look at this as to which way I would like this as being the top of my pepper mill. And by looking at it, I want to have this as being the top of the pepper mill right here. So I've made a couple of center holes into the, so I know exactly where we want to be. And we'll get that and center it in there, tighten it up, and bring up and set up our lathe that's ready to turn. We'll turn it by hand, and we're now going to make this a round piece. So we're going to turn the lathe on and start our turning. And I'm going to use a little roughing gouge. Okay, now that we've made it round, the next step I'm going to do, I'm going to put a tenon on this end right here so that we can, when we put it into the chuck. So right now my next step is to put a tenon on this end right here. Now I'm just going to make the tenon so it fits into the jaws on my chuck, and I'm going to just take a little bit more there, and I think that's going to work nice for my chuck. Now we'll just remove that safe drive and install the chuck. And for safety reason, we will Make sure the chuck is safety, that we're not going to lose it. And now we're ready to install it. Okay, and we will start now. We'll install this in our chuck. We will tighten up the chuck so that... Now there's one thing that I use that necessary, not everyone that would just make in one pepper mill, but what I use, a steady rest, because I'm drilling in here 8 inches and I want to make sure that this is, that the pepper mill doesn't move on me. So the next step is to install our steady rest. This part here just attaches to make both, swing both ways. Just turn it on and make sure that all the wheels are running there. The first bit we're going to use is a 1 3/4, and we're going to drill this in 1 inch into the pepper mill. The next one we're going to use, and which is very critical, is the 1 9/16. The first bit you could use up to 2 inches, but this is the crucial one. You can't change this bit. This is what seats the ceramic mechanism. Then the third bit we'll use is the one that drills through, which is a 1 1/16. But you could go up to 1 1/4. But we're going to use a Jacob's chuck, and in my lathe right here, the big lathe, this is a number 3 Morse taper. Now, if you're into a smaller lathe that's only got a number 2 Morse taper. But this one here I got special because I wanted to, rather than have an extension from a 2 to the 3, I got a number 3 Morse taper, so it makes a solid drilling. Now we're going to start our drilling, and we're going to drill 1 inch in on this. Just need it just a tad more. That's it for the first drill. Now we're going to drill in an extra 1.5 inches with this 1 9/16. Our next step now is to drill the main channel through. So then we're going to switch over to a 1 1/16 drill bit. After that, I'm just going to go in there just to start the 1 1/16. Got to get a nice clean start. Now really, if I was going to use this drill bit all the way through, I would need an extension, because I need to drill 8 inch. This is the first extension that I had bought, and really it doesn't work very good, because when you get so much movement as you go up. A friend of ours in the Guild, Elio Menace from Lloydminster, he has designed a good extension with a good Forstner bit that you can buy at Lee Valley. They're expensive, but they're good, and he's got it that it locks. With this one here, you can see it's just a straight, you just tighten the screws and it loosens up, and it doesn't give you the good control in it. As I was looking years ago when I first started to make peppermill, I was looking around for a different bit with a number 3 Morse taper, and this is a 1 1/16, and it fits in the number 3 Morse taper on my lathe. But if you're using a small lathe with a number 2 Morse taper, you can't get a 1 1/16 bit. The biggest I could get was a 1 inch for a number 2 Morse taper. And that's what I'll use to drill the remainder 8 inches up into my peppermill. Okay, so I'm going to measure there that I want to go up in here 8 inches. So this is going to be, this is where I'm going to cut off and attach my top to it. So I want to be up there at 8 inches. So I want to drill into here 8 inches into here. So I'm going to come back somewhere in here. So. As you can see, I keep taking the shavings out as I go in. So now we'll check, see, I want to be in there up 8 inches in there, so I'll just check on this, and I think we're just about right on there. It's going to work good for us. Okay, so now we are finished with the drilling of the 1 1/16. And now we're going to take our steady rest off, and we won't need it from here on in. Okay, now I'm going to put a cone on this end. What I'm going to make right here, I'm going to make a tenon on here as well. I'm going to make a 1 3/8 tenon. Now that we've got the tenon set there, and now I'm going to make the cutoff. And I'm taking a very small parting chisel, and we're going to cut this off. And I'm not going to go all the way through. I'm going to take a little Swedish saw or a Japanese saw to cut the remainder off. Now the next step is I'm going to drill 1 3/8 in here so I can set that tenon in, so that when the peppermill is put together, that it makes us really a nice staple. In the instructions, this is a step that over the years that I didn't like the way it originally was, and I made this step, and I really like it. It makes the makes the pepper more stable. So as you can see, it's going to fit in there like that. We have one more drill to do, and that is 15/16, where you put in the top of the pepper mill. So that's the next step. So now this is the last drilling that I'm going to do. I want enough room so that when this goes through, that it will go through all the way. So I'm going to drill this up. I can go up, you know, quite a ways up in there. So as you can see right now, I'm going to be, the distance that I'm going to be up in here is I'm going to be up right up there. So that gives me lots of room. So our next step now is to put this together, and then we're going to, and it depends on your design. My design really don't change that very much. I use a standard one that I've been using, and that's the one I do mostly. So bring up the tailstock, and now I can we can start to do the turning on it. So I'm making a set of salt and pepper grinders. So what I want to do today is to make another one that matches this one, except for the walnut and maple have been reversed. So I'm just using a roughing gouge here, a small roughing gouge, but sometimes I will use a skew on this as well. Now I've got this down to the shape that I wanted. Now I'm going to is to do a little sanding on it, and then I'll put a couple of beads in after. Now that I've finished up to 600, I'm going to take this over, and I want to make the beads the same place on the new one as on the other one. So I'll mark these beads and then be able to put the beads on. And one other thing I like to do is to make a burnt line where the top and the bottom meets. Now I'm going to make a few beads on this pepper mill, but I'm going to use a little cheating tool to make my beads. It's a Robert Sorby beading tool, so I'm going to make these 3 beads on this. And there's my 3 beads. And now I just have to complete the, take the top off of it. Okay, now I'm going to take the pepper mill apart, and now what we're going to do is finish off the top of the pepper mill. And we'll do that in a couple of stages. First of all, we will take this out of the chuck, and we will use all these little little jam chucks that you make, that you use them over time, and that little jam chuck will fit in right there, so I can bring up my tailstock to right there, and now I can finish off the top of the pepper mill. Okay, now we're going to try and do the finish up on the top of the pepper mill. And now, for the last little step, I'm going to use my chatter tool and put a little bit of a chatter on top of the mill. Okay, and that's the way that I make a pepper mill. The only other thing to do from there on in is to put the finish on it and put the mechanisms inside of it. Now that we've finished putting the finish on the pepper mill, the next step is to install the mechanism. These are ceramics that I buy at Lee Valley. The quality is very good, and they need to be glued in. So the next step is to check and see what we need for the length. These can be cut off to the exact length that we need. And as you can see, that this is a little long, so we're going to have to. It's just about a ½ an inch too long, so we're going to have to take it and cut it off. For the glue we use 5 minutes epoxy. So I'm going to mix up a little. Now, make sure that you refit this before you put the epoxy on, that your mechanism in there, it really fits nice and snug. And we'll take it back out, and then we will put the epoxy on it. And I'll start with, there's not, I usually take these knobs off here, just grind them down a bit, just to, but it said you don't really have to. But make sure and have some good epoxy all the way around on it. The next step is to fit that epoxy in. Now the next stage is I'm going to put a little epoxy in the grinding part of it. This one does stay in pretty good, but I still recommend that you put a little epoxy on it. There. Now, I recommend that you leave that, it says 5 minute epoxy, but I usually let it sit for a couple of hours before I put it together. There it is right now. This is a Mel Genge pepper mill. Hope you enjoy it.